Youth and Family Homelessness is the third in a series of A Roof town hall meetings to be held around the state. A Roof is a year-long project examining housing and homelessness issues in Alaska, produced by KTOO Public Media and 360 North. Contributors include the Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority, the Alaska Coalition on Housing and Homelessness, and the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence Juneau in partnership with the Juneau Clean Air Coalition.
Hello, welcome to a Roof Town Hall discussion on youth and family homelessness. I'm Casey Kelly from KTOO Public Media and 360 North, and tonight we're in Ketchikan, where social service nonprofits estimate there are at least 100 homeless individuals and families at any given time. But because there's no dedicated family shelter, the exact number can be hard to pin down. Our panel tonight will be discussing homeless families and children and ways to improve services for them in Ketchikan, and we hope to generate some ideas from our audience as well. As we talk, please line up at the microphone and we'll take your questions as they arise. Our panel tonight includes Lisa Scarborough. She's Executive Director of Love in Action, a Christian organization that provides services to people in need, including single parents, seniors, and people with disabilities. Love in Action provides gap-based services, meaning it fills in the gaps where other agencies and nonprofits are unable to provide services. Hailey Beard is with Women in Safe Homes, or WISH, Ketchikan's 24/7 domestic violence shelter. Besides being an emergency shelter, WISH also has programs designed to assist, educate, and advocate for people or victims of domestic violence. Merle Nancy Hawkins is with Tlingit Haida Central Council, the tribal government for more than 30,000 Tlingit Haida Indians worldwide. And the Central Council has a number of programs to assist tribal members, including family programs and services for the elderly. Jo Parrott is with Residential Youth Care, a Ketchikan nonprofit that provides residential behavioral services to Alaskan youth. And Kaila Del Rosario, she's an emancipated high school student who knows several people who have been or are homeless, including many of her peers. Welcome to our panel tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa, let's start with the Ketchikan Wellness Coalition came out with a 10-year community homeless plan earlier this year. Can you talk about what the impetus for that plan was?
Yeah, you know, our task force, Seeking Community Homeless Solutions, which has morphed like 4 times, so took on the reality of homelessness about 4 years ago. And we started out by getting a grant from the state of Alaska through Alaska Housing Finance Corporation that allowed us to hire a homeless coordinator for 2 years, which we did. Gillian Milne filled that position for a little over a year and a half. And she was able to go around and talk to the homeless in our community. She was really relational, so she was really able to get down to the people. She spent a lot of time at the soup kitchen and at the shelter and the day shelter. She went to Metlakatla and Prince of Wales and just started talking to the people and trying to figure out what was going on, why were people homeless, who was homeless. And the more and more we researched it and the more and more we looked at it, we realized that there were some real specific things that our community is lacking in addressing the homeless in Ketchikan. And the 2 biggest things that were dealt with were the fact that there's no dedicated family shelter, as you mentioned earlier, and we have no idea what's happening with the youth in our community that are homeless. And we know it's happening. We know they're out there. We know they're couch hopping or staying who knows where, but we have no way to count them, no way to address it. There's just nothing in town that addresses that subculture in the community. So we started putting some facts together, some qualitative, some quantitative issues, and some research, and we just threw it together in one document and just to get the awareness out there. And this is what we came up with. So.
All right, and the plan itself presents 4 issues of need in Ketchikan. Can you kind of describe what those issues are and why are they needs?
Let me refer to the plan. It's not that I haven't read it 12 times, but it's been a while. So the first one we recognized was comprehensive shelter. So we have a wonderful, the PATH is a wonderful shelter. The majority of its clients, though, are men, single men.
Just for clarification, what is the PATH?
Oh, PATH, Park Avenue Temporary Home. It's the local homeless shelter. but not a whole lot of facility for families. We have WISH, Women in Safe Homes, but they are a domestic violence shelter whose primary mandate is those experiencing domestic violence. So they don't have a whole lot of space for families and not the whole family. So when we're talking a male, female, and children, that precludes their any ability to serve the whole family right there. And then we have a day shelter program that again is primarily serving the single individuals. So there's no place really for the families to go as a whole unit, to have family services and family dedicated rooms where the families can stay together. So that was it, comprehensive shelter. We would love to see our community have a shelter that serves everybody, not counting WISH clients because they need the autonomy to have a separate safe place to be. So that was the first part, comprehensive shelter was we needed a shelter that serves everybody. So that was the first part of it.
Sure, and I was gonna ask Hailey, since you're with WISH, how would WISH kind of work with a comprehensive shelter? How would you complement each other?
I think that would be a great benefit to WISH. I've turned away full families, but our database doesn't keep the exact number of full families that we do have to turn away. But I can tell you that last year we provided beds for 1,361 nights for women who were homeless and identified strictly as homeless, and not just as it being a secondary issue when it comes to domestic violence or sexual assault.
So these are women that might not even have experienced domestic violence and sexual assault and just needed a place to get off the streets?
Yeah, about 10% of the women that come to shelter, their primary issue is homelessness, and they have children, and so we won't refer them to PATH due to the fact that it's an unsafe environment. And with men, when it comes to men, they can't stay at PATH if they have a child of the opposite sex. So if a man comes in and is a victim of domestic violence, we are unable to provide him with 30-day shelter. And he cannot stay at PATH if he has a little girl with him. So, but most of the time that women that are homeless with children that do stay in shelter, more times than not end up identifying as domestic violence and sexual assault survivors. So.
Okay. Kaila, can you talk about some of the people that you know, your friends who may be homeless or have experienced homelessness in the past, and you know these are your peers. So where do they stay? Like where are they living?
Oh, does it work now? Oh. Yeah. I know a lot of my friends, and we were talking about earlier how it's not always the kids' fault at first. It's what's going on at home, their mom, their dad, or even who's ever taking care of them. I've noticed, I'm not going to mention anyone's name, but one of my friends, she's couch hopping. She has so much potential. When she was at school, she had good grades. She just didn't have a home, and she just started to feel really down about her life. She didn't know where to go, and so she dropped out of school, and she's still at the same situation right now, how she doesn't have a place to go. She told me this one story, like you guys mentioned, WISH, and she was underage, so she can't go there. She can't go to the homeless shelter because it's not the safest place. Well, it's a good place for homeless people, but a girl her age, she shouldn't be there. So she was just really sad.
What are some of the effects on their schoolwork? What has that been like?
Attendance-wise, or not even focusing on their schoolwork just because they have other things to worry about, like where am I going to stay tonight? Mm-hmm. What am I going to eat tonight? And I was one of those friends who offer them, you can stay tonight at my house, or you can, whenever you need anything, just tell me, but she can't always just live with me 24 hours. So she has to find a next place after another, couch hopping, like you mentioned earlier, Lisa. And it's not just her, which is the sad part. There's a lot of kids here in Ketchikan that was dealing with a lot of that stuff. And myself, when I moved out when I was 16, I wasn't homeless, but there's almost a part of that event is when I was struggling to keep a place. Yeah.
Yeah. Katie, I see you shaking your head yes. And can you talk about what kind of services does residential youth provide that can help kids in a situation like that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. We're limited what we can do to a certain extent because we treat, we're a mental health provider, so we're treating clients and youth with some presenting problems that translate into a mental health disorder. But what I want to touch on is verify everything that she's saying and validate what she's saying. About the challenges that youth have when they're dealing with a traumatic or problematic home environment. Right now, I don't know how much people know because youth are very resourceful. They're very resilient. They'll figure out a place to sleep. They'll figure out a place to go from day to day to day. They don't want to identify as homeless, and according to certain definitions, they might not be because they have a couch to sleep on. They might have a friend's home to go to. Even some of the youth who are camping in the woods, which that's happening right now. Some of the youth in Ketchikan are staying the night in the woods in a tent, but they don't consider that homeless. They're camping. Even some youth who are sleeping in cars, they don't consider that homeless. They're sleeping in a car. And so I think one of the challenges we have in gathering data to show what's really happening is to that definition about what it means to be homeless. And youth don't tend to identify as homeless. So that's a challenge that we have in front of us to really take a look at what's happening there.
Okay. Let's bring Merle into the conversation here. Does Tlingit Haida Central Council offer any kind of residential services for homeless people, or how would you handle it if let's say a tribal member came to you and said, I'm having trouble, finding a place to stay, and I can't make my rent or something like that along those lines?
Yeah, presently they don't have any funding that's allocated toward the homeless issue. I know they have the TANA program where they can get assistance to help pay for housing, but it's limited. I think you can only be on those programs for 2 years anymore, whereas before they would seem like go on forever. So it's very limited on what they have. Here locally, I'm a Ketchikan delegate for Tlingit Haida, but Tlingit Haida is based in Juneau, so they're a regional tribe, and so they represent villages from all over Southeast Alaska. But I know for Ketchikan is kind of like a regional urban hub for the area villages, so that's why we end up with so many people in the community that might be having housing issues or homeless issues.
Mm-hmm. Is homelessness a problem in some of the surrounding communities, or is it the fact that people move to Ketchikan because there are better services here? Ketchikan has an issue.
The main reason people come to Ketchikan are for more services, more employment opportunities, and we have that where people are moving out of the villages for those reasons, lack of economy, lack of jobs or opportunities for jobs or training, so they end up coming to the urban areas like Ketchikan, and so it can be an issue. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the reality is that underneath Juneau, outside of Sitka's women's shelter, there's no other shelter in southern Southeast Alaska except Ketchikan. That's it.
Mm-hmm. So this comprehensive shelter idea, what does that look like? What can we describe that at this point?
Well, I mean, our vision would be a shelter that services the families and the individuals, both. So a shelter that's split into 3 sections, one for men, one for women, and then one for families. And also that services those who have physical disabilities that may not be able to go up or down stairs or anything like that. So one facility managed, and where all of us are pulling our resources together into one entity. That's the dream.
Let's have everybody else chime in on that same question. Hailey, do you have ideas for what a comprehensive shelter would look like in Ketchikan?
Yeah, like as mentioned before, WISH cannot help facilitate safe housing for a person under the age of 18 years old without being accompanied by an adult. And so I've seen many cases where I cannot help a child because OCS has not yet identified as their home environment as being unsafe to their standards. And so, and CRIF and RYC a lot of times are court-ordered in short-term stays, and so you have these kids that have no options, and 1 in 10 youth right now in Ketchikan are considered homeless. And so just full families and people that fall through the cracks that don't necessarily meet the WISH criteria to stay in shelter, that's more long-term than 30 days because we are a temporary 30-day shelter. And a lot of times the resources we are lacking here in Ketchikan, it takes a lot longer to build anew when you're starting from scratch. And 80% of the women that we do work with are homeless due to the fact that they had shared homes with their perpetrators, whether it be an intimate relationship or a family member or roommate. And so at the point of them leaving their perpetrator, they are considered homeless. So.
Merle, do you have ideas for what a comprehensive homeless shelter would look like in Ketchikan?
Oh, I certainly would. And as we discuss the issues and the needs, we learned that, there's certain laws that have to be followed. You'd have to have a sprinkler system. You'd have to maybe have separate entrances for the different areas, the family area and the other area for the men. And so there's a lot of, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I'm sure that people that are more educated than me have all the answers. But my dream for a comprehensive shelter here in Ketchikan would be to provide services for those that were listed, the men, the families, the women, and just basic rooms where you could put the beds in. You'd have bathroom facilities. Just for me, I'd keep it pretty basic. And because there's a lot of other services that could come alongside. But the first need, I think, is for people to have a stable place to stay and to rest, to have an address, to have safety. And if you start covering those basic things, everything else is going to fall into line, the employment and the solutions for the rest of their health issues and problems will be provided.
Right.
But,
I believe the homelessness, the experts on chronic homelessness that I've spoken to call that the housing first model. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I don't know if everybody up here is familiar with that model where you provide basic, permanent supportive housing for the chronically homeless, and then you address the root cause of their homelessness. Katie, do you think that's something that could work here in Ketchikan?
I do. I absolutely do. And, there's some housing first models that have started up north in Anchorage. And, there was some skepticism in the communities about what that was going to look like and some fear around what that was going to look like. And I think now we're about a year later, that model is proving to work. It's proven effective, and I would totally be in support of that. I think that that's a really important first step. I would also say that examining some of the potential causes for homelessness is also really important, and to kind of take a whole health and well-being approach. Because, like Hailey touched on, there is a lot of trauma involved in a homeless situation or becoming marginally housed. And this is something that's being studied in more depth in recent years. And they're finding that homeless individuals, especially chronic homeless individuals, tend to have a much higher rate of trauma in their childhood that have led to a series of complications. And so taking a look at that and serving all of those needs, I feel like that would be a really important aspect of this. My dream would be that we would offer support services to meet the needs of the family in addition to housing. But I absolutely think that housing first that's key.
Mm-hmm. Kaila, do you have any thoughts on what a comprehensive homeless shelter in Ketchikan would look like, and better ways that it could serve people that are your age?
I actually do agree what just have said about people dealing with trauma, and a lot of my friends or youth my age do deal with a lot of that stuff growing up. And with a house like that, it'd be cool to have like someone to counsel them, along with having a roof over their head, to talk about how could they deal with their trauma, how could they deal with their problem, how are they gonna start getting a job or something like that.
Somebody mentioned just a minute ago about different definitions of homelessness, and I know the federal government has one definition. HUD and then the state of Alaska has another. What are some of those differences, and does it affect the services that you're able to provide?
It does, depending on what services you're doing. HUD says that you are homeless under their umbrella if you are living in a shelter, living in your car, living in a boat that doesn't run, living in a shed, living in a tent, living in a campground. But if you're couch hopping, that's not considered homelessness by HUD. The state of Alaska recognizes the fact that if you don't have a boat in your name, then you're homeless. So, which is a real advantage to Alaska. They actually recognize the fact that people couch hopping and living in someone's living room on the couch is homelessness. I mean, these people don't have a household, they just have a couch to sleep on at night. I mean, I've known clients that they can come in and cook, but they can't stay there at night. It's this real stretch. So it's really nice that Alaska recognizes that homelessness is more than just living in a shelter or being in your car. So that's a big advantage. For me, for my housing grant that I've had since 2009, it's administered by HUD, but because it comes through the state of Alaska, it allows me to help place people even if they're living with family or friends. Where if we were running by HUD's guidelines, I wouldn't even be able to address people who are living with family and friends. They would have to literally be in a shelter or in their car in order for me to even place them. So that does make a difference. The definitions can definitely make a difference to services based on where your funding's coming from.
Have any of our other panelists, Hailey, have you found that?
I do find that kind of weird, because when my friend applied for food stamp and she was couch hopping, they did consider that as a home for them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because it's a federal mandate.
Yeah.
Food stamps are a federal
and
program.
Sometimes there's days where she's not couch hopping. And it's kind of weird to hear you guys mention all of living in a tent, camping, car, boat. That's all the places that one friend I know that would just switch on and off every day as their home.
So Hailey, you looked like you had a comment based on that last question.
Oh, at WISH, we receive specific guidelines that we have to abide by in order to receive grants from the state, which we have to adhere to extremely. And it's just unfortunate that since we don't have a shelter that accepts people that we would consider chronic inebriants or, and Women in Safe Homes is a substance-free environment. And so we just need a transitional housing here, and that WISH is not a transitional housing, and I think it gets confused as that a lot of times. But the facts are that homeless women are 2 to 4 times at greater risk of any type of violence when compared with all women. And so would be sitting down with a woman, talking to her, and I'm sorry, you don't have any new act of domestic violence or sexual assault, and so unfortunately, I'm going to have to refer you to PATH. And she has to come talk to me a week later because she was homeless and she was a victim of a violent crime. And at that point, then I would let her stay, but it's just the specific grants, and when they're getting funneled into certain organizations where they have to stick to certain guidelines, we're just missing a lot of people are falling through the cracks, and youth especially. So
you mentioned transitional housing. Can you talk a little bit about what the difference is between what you provide with the emergency shelter and what you mean by transitional housing? Because I think a lot of people are confused by what it is, what transitional housing actually means.
Yeah, so we are a 30-day emergency shelter and women in safe homes. And so basically when women come in, we have guidelines that we look over with them to scale their lethality rate in the home that they are staying in at that point. And if their lethality rate, we see that it is going to increase, another act of violence is going to happen, then they are able to stay within shelter. But if there is no new act of domestic violence or sexual assault, so say a woman is coping with severe trauma. She is coping by using a substance. She's staying in shelter. We are a substance-free environment. She comes to shelter, and I am going to have to refer her out because we can't have the other women staying in shelter, safety at risk due to the fact that she is using, and so I refer her out. But when she comes back the next day, more times than not, there was no new act of domestic violence or sexual assault, so I have to refer her to PATH. And a lot of times women do not want to go to a homeless shelter as PATH that is co-ed because of the trauma that they have experienced. And it's just a catch-22.
Mm-hmm. And is PATH just a day shelter?
Or no, it's the night shelter.
Evening shelter,
yeah,
okay.
We have a day shelter program and a night shelter program.
Okay.
Yeah. Transitional housing, in Ketchikan hasn't had any at all. There was some alcohol transitional housing here years ago, but transitional housing, for people that don't really understand the difference, emergency shelter is generally speaking a 30-day program. The WISH and the PATH are both 30-day programs. They might extend it based on their board or the situation, but generally speaking, they're short-term. Transitional housing is originally set up so that people are in a position to where they have their own space. Sometimes it's boarding rooms, sometimes it's small rooms or whatever, where they have 6 months to 18 months to get back into a sustainable lifestyle. So, and Ketchikan hasn't had any kind of regular homeless transitional housing as long as I've been around. So there was, like I said, TLC, Transitional Living Center, was alcohol rehab. They would come out of Car House and go into that for up till 18 months, but it was specifically geared for alcoholic rehab. So there's no homeless transitional housing, and I don't think there's ever been any here.
Mm-hmm. Just a reminder that you're tuned into a Youth and Family Homelessness Town Hall from Ketchikan, part of a ROOF year-long project on housing and homelessness in Alaska, produced by KTOO Public Media and 360 North. And if we have any questions from our audience, please feel free to queue up at the microphone at any time, and we'll take your questions just as they arise, or your comments if you have any comments as well. I wanted to get into just another recommendation of the 10-year homelessness plan, and that was the recommendation that all or most nonprofit service organizations adopt a kind of similar intake form, so that I guess the idea is to promote better collaboration. Merle, maybe start with you, and we can go down and have everybody kind of chime in on what the benefits would be of this kind of comprehensive intake form. Would that help you steer some people that might come to you for help in a different direction, or get them the services that they need?
Oh yeah, I think a similar intake form makes a lot of sense for our community. For me, one of the biggest problems I see is that all the programs are so polarized. They're all different funding sources. They serve different people, but I think anything that would help bring these programs together. I know for the Ketchikan Wellness Coalition, we had a MOU or MOA with the day shelter and those types of things that would help the programs work together, especially if they're servicing the same people, and anything that would help streamline the services, and they could communicate with each other on who they've already helped, and so there's no double dipping and that type of thing, would certainly make things a lot easier, knowing who we're servicing and who needs service or who we're missing.
Katie, can you think of a way that it would help with what you do?
Yeah, I can. I think it would help our community tremendously to start gathering data and taking a look at what's actually happening here. I think that in our own ways, all of us see different parts of this problem and how it manifests in our own organizations and the families and youth that we deal with, but we don't have a way right now to kind of comprehensively and cohesively gather data. And I think that that's what we're going to have to do in order to raise community awareness and then decide what we're going to do about that once we see what the scope actually is. I'm actually not a fan of waiting until we see what the scope actually is, but I think that that's a powerful way that we can take that to the community, to the state potentially, and access some other funding mechanisms that we could get some more support for what we're trying to do. You know, we all know and we all see that this is happening, and that it's a problem in our community, but, you know, being able to articulate that with data, with kind of the hard facts is going to have to be something that we do.
Mm-hmm. Would that work for WISH, do you think, Hailey? A comprehensive intake form that was shared between nonprofits?
I think that would help us a great deal because we do keep track of how many women identify as homelessness when they do come in. It's a secondary problem though, but I think that would be great if we could share that information confidentially with the other community partners.
Yeah, I think you would have to, especially in the case of a domestic violence shelter, make sure that that information is confidential. Is that something you'd be concerned about with sharing information with other nonprofits?
I think that we could find a way about keeping it confidential, but sharing numbers with the community partners to help this problem because we see a large amount of women. Like I said, we served, I think, 1,300 women last year with 1,300 beds last year for women who identified themselves as homeless as a primary. And with PATH, they stop intaking women at certain hours and men at certain hours. And so a lot of times we'll get phone calls from the hospital late in the evening with women who do not have a bed for the night because they are homeless, but PATH is closed.
Mm-hmm. Lisa, real quick, can you talk about how that would help some of the nonprofits you work with? You provide these gap-based services, right? So if you're trying to fill in those gaps, how do you, would that benefit Love in Action in terms of working with other nonprofits?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, there are programs where you can, that's online programs now that are made for communities. There are communities that do that, where their nonprofits all log into an online thing and load. And the clients are just assigned numbers, so we're not sharing names, we're sharing numbers. So so that keeps things confidential. But yeah, if we could work together as a community, our nonprofits, so that people aren't double dipping in this. I mean, we're not trying to enable people. We're trying to give them a helping hand up, not a helping hand out, so that they can better maintain a stable lifestyle, so that they can maintain their strengths in the community to be community partners rather than someone just constantly feeding off the community. And if we were able to share what we're doing for each of these clients that we're serving, and many of us are serving the same clients with different types. Now, I'm not saying that we're doubling services. I'm just saying we're serving the same clients for a lot of different issues. And yeah, if we could come up with some kind of community intake that, that would help us share information, yes, that would be vitally helpful.
Okay.
Definitely.
We have a question from an audience member or a comment. Whatever, if it's a question or a comment, just say your name and take it away.
My name's Cecily Cody, and I work at RYC. I'm the clinical director there. And one of the groups that I feel are missing in this consortium is the legal representative. People like probation officers, adult and juvenile probation officers that I've worked with are extremely interested in their clients' homeless status because it's actually against probation. It's a violation of probation or parole to have a change, or it just creates a whole lot of problems for people. And almost 90% or 100% of the workers that I have interacted with work very hard to help and keep people in stable homes. And I know that it's been a while since I've worked with adult probation, but there have been initiatives within the Department of Corrections that have approved significant funding for like a year or two for one person to be like up to 80% of their rent is covered while they're complying with parole or probation requirements. So I guess my question, I guess that's one point, but then my question would be what kind of cooperation or what kind of data or like in what way or what role do you think people who work in the legal system would be able to contribute to this discussion?
That's a great point. Who wants to take that one on?
Sure.
Yeah. Kaila?
I think, like I mentioned earlier, it'd be cool if any counselors out there will volunteer to talk to those homeless youth or family of what they went through, or like you guys mentioned, trauma, or how they got into that place, to volunteer to just talk to them.
Mm-hmm. Just out of curiosity, how many of you deal with people who have contact with the legal system in some sort of way?
We do.
Katie, yeah, and is that a challenge, once they're coming out of either prison or, a halfway house to find them a place to stay?
Our programs are kind of unique because we provide the residential piece. So we're a residential treatment program. So when we have contact with individuals, we're providing that. I think that the role, I know that in the Department of Corrections, they are putting much more of focus on trauma-informed care. And so understanding that the people that they're serving have backgrounds where trauma is involved, and to try to take a look at how that factors into these behaviors that end up with their involvement in the legal system. And so I think that there's something to be said for the changes that are taking place there, that there's this kind of culture of care that's being developed, that I think that there would probably be more willingness and involvement to support those people who are coming out of the legal system to be able to provide for some of those needs to, help facilitate that transition. We know that that being in transition, being homeless and being marginally housed creates quite a bit of stress in ways that potentially impact someone's functioning ability. And a lot of times when we're stressed, we regress to those maladaptive kinds of behaviors that are the go-to, that are the default. And some of those patterns of behaviors are the reasons people get involved in the legal system to begin with. And so taking a different approach and being able to provide for a basic need, to give someone the platform from which they can start building skills to create a life, I think that's absolutely vital. And the people that I've worked with in juvenile probation have been very, very open and willing to working with families and being a part of that kind of overall achieving stability and trying to gain some ground. So
it sounds like that legal piece should be part of this comprehensive homeless shelter that you're talking about. There should be perhaps weekly visits by Alaska Legal Services or some other nonprofit that can help people who may have, for whatever reason, need to talk to a lawyer or talk to somebody about a legal problem?
Oh, yeah, definitely. You know, there's just a bunch of different services happening that not everybody knows everything about. So I didn't know anything about that juvenile health had any money that did any of that. I know that the jail, the Ketchikan Correctional Center, has some limited resources to help with housing for certain inmates that come out, but I don't even know what the specific criteria are. I don't deal with youth, but I deal with a lot of individuals that come out of jail, and if they don't have any kind of, you know, support or anything, most of them are usually men, but women too, where they come out with nothing, no housing, no job, no income. Yeah. So if we knew what was available out there, yeah, definitely, it's definitely a conversation that needs to start. Sure. I wasn't aware of it at all.
And Hailey?
Well, many of the women that I work with have been in the legal system, and it is extremely hard for them to integrate back into the community, whether it be a job or home, and some of the times they do end up in shelter straight out of leaving a detention center. And so wish we do have, the Alaska Network on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault does have a pro bono program that doesn't specifically just help women with protective orders or family affairs, but just a whole spectrum of things, just because it is so hard to integrate back into the community after coming from a correction facility.
Okay. Another comment or question from our audience. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
This is Bobby McCreary. I'd like to know if anyone has information about those that are aging out of foster care and that issue.
Yes.
That's a great question. Go ahead,
I'm
Katie.
so glad you brought that up, Bobby, because that was one of the issues I was hoping that we would talk about. This is a tremendous issue, and the amount of youth who were in the custody of the state who have aged out, that's a disproportionate number of our homeless youth population. So, you know, Covenant House in Anchorage, they serve, 5,000 or 6,000 youth a year, and some of their data suggests that 46% of those youth, the youth that have aged out of the custody of the state of Alaska, have had contact with Covenant House as at some point being homeless. That's mind-blowing to me, that about almost half of the youth who have aged out of the system are accessing, you know, them for services. It's one of the things that we've been working on because it's a huge need, trying to figure out how to support youth who are entering adulthood and for whatever reason have wound up in the system and maybe haven't been given kind of that foundation of a home and a family and a supportive network of people who are teaching them these skills they need to be independent adults. And so one of the things that's happening in the Division of Behavioral Health right now is they're actually creating a whole division for supportive housing. And my hope is that this is going to be an area where they focus some funding and some attention for some programs, because it's a tremendous need. There, you know, we have in the state some very good foster homes who will support their kids through that transition when they're aging out. But we don't have enough. We don't have enough. I was recently at a permanency summit where this issue was brought up, and overwhelmingly what we heard from the foster youth who are aging out of the system is having support through 18 isn't enough. I'm not ready. It's not enough.
18 is when the kids age out?
Technically, yes. However, one of the awesome things that's happened in the state of Alaska is they've actually extended the age of care to 21.
Okay, because I was going to say, I probably wasn't ready to cut the cord from my parents at 18.
Right. And overwhelmingly, one of the things that came up again and again and again is really basic needs from these youth. I want a place to go on the holidays. I want a place, I want a home to go to at Christmas. I want someone to be able to call when my car breaks down. I want to know what to do if, I wreck my car and, I have to deal with the insurance company. Some of these things are really basic, and some of these basic life skills are barriers to youth who have aged out of the system achieving a productive and successful life. And having a supportive housing environment that could provide some of that underlying support system for a period of time, that we could be providing, some skills training, some education around, entering the workforce, what it means to own a car, how do you get a credit card, how do you set a budget, and so those are things that programs around the state are starting to build into what they're doing, and we're one of those. We're trying to build that into what we're doing, but there's not quite enough. There's not quite enough support, and so a disproportionate amount of those youth are becoming homeless.
Mm-hmm. Kaila, do you have any comments or thoughts about kids who are aging out of foster care? I know you're not in foster care yourself, but what can be done to better serve that population?
I'm sorry, I was coughing.
Yeah, no problem.
What was that again?
Kids who are aging out of the foster care system and still need kind of a support network to help them, into young adulthood. Do you have any thoughts about how we can provide better services like that here in Ketchikan and statewide?
Just how I survive getting ready when I live on my own was mostly the teachers who supported me. They're amazing. I wouldn't be where I'm at without all the people helping me out, telling me to keep going to school, and everything else. I think how to help those people who turned 18 and are ready, they should have people who volunteer to help them.
Mm-hmm. Better outreach to schools sounds like it might be one solution.
Yeah.
I'm all about the research. I'm all about wanting to have some facts to underlie this. And what she's saying is what the research shows, that one of the single most key factors in building resiliency for youth is having one adult person that they know they can go to who will support them through a variety of life experiences. One. It doesn't even need to be 10. It can be one. That's one of the biggest resiliency factors for youth to overcome the barriers and challenges in their life.
Okay.
Even if I was on my own living, there's always that one teacher that helps me get up every day. I was never alone. Yeah.
Another question or comment from our audience.
Okay. My name is Agnes Moran, and during my time, I was formerly a borough assembly member, and I know this borough and the city were both very good at funding individual programs. But have you ever engaged both of the local municipalities at a larger level? Because I know a lot of your elected officials, and I don't see any in the audience here tonight, have no clue as to the extent of the homeless problem in this community. And I think they could, if you're talking about a comprehensive shelter program, because I don't think it'll be one shelter because there's too many diverse needs and conflicts there, that there are funding streams that a municipality has access to, such as bonding, such as, grants from a different level. But during my 5 years on the Assembly, even though we were good at funding individual programs, I don't think there was ever a high-level awareness of what the true needs in the community are. And as a borough assembly member, I never saw this or was aware that this was even taking place. And I was probably one of the more tuned in elected officials to some of the issues going on in the community. And I guess I'd like to have a comment on how you engage your municipal officials and your municipal structure, perhaps to support what you're doing here.
That's a great question.
Well, we haven't gotten that far yet, Agnes. That's the issue. So this was just all kind of pretty much put together late this year. So, and then every time we made a plan to get it to the city and the borough assembly, starting, say, August and September, something else would come up. Too many of us were out of town or something. So I kind of held off until after the forum. And so my hope is to hit the assembly and the city starting next month or January, so that at least they would see what we've come up with. Yeah, that's why it didn't come out. I mean, it was just put together the middle to late of this year, so actually put in document form.
And we've talked about, go ahead.
On that, then, are you planning on engaging them as part of the solution, or is just engaging them on an informational basis? Because when you look at like the borough, you have scads of experience with planning, which, you know, they know a lot about that type of stuff, but there's a lot of different talent sets there. So if it's...
Well, the hope is both.
Both, okay.
Yeah, both. This is what we see, this is what we've recognized, this is what we need to do in the community to address the issue, and then, yeah, how can you help?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I can tell you from my reporting on Juneau issues that the part of the solution is maybe, like Agnes mentioned, getting the city involved in terms of bonding or giving some land for a potential shelter, but then the nonprofit sector has to step up and be the ones that run it, because the city doesn't have the resources to be able to do that.
Yeah, and we would not propose that the city or the borough try and run it, definitely. Yeah.
But that sounds like it's on the agenda. That's
it's a direction we want to head, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you see like one agency kind of taking the lead in terms of maybe being the agency that runs a comprehensive shelter?
Well, you know, we've batted that around for quite a bit in our task force, and the Wellness Coalition isn't designed to run programs. It was never designed to do that in the first place. Right now, my agency is probably would take the lead at this point. Mm-hmm. So, but we are not there yet.
And then another, in terms of funding sources, I don't know, Merle might have be able to weigh in, because I know Tlingit and Haida does get a significant federal funding. So is there funding available through Tlingit and Haida for a project like this?
Yeah, there's a lot of hope, because when I was on the KIC Tribal Council and we were going to do our first housing project, we didn't have the experience, so we partnered with Tlingit and Haida Central Council out of Juneau, and that's how KIC donated some of the land and Tlingit and Haida donated some of the land, but they went ahead with the tax credit program because they had the experience. So that's my hope. Is I know for any housing project, especially with the homeless, I've noticed it takes many different agencies to participate, and that's the only way this is going to work, is if we all cooperate. And because I know under the federal funding that Tlingit and Haida and KIC receives, that there are ways, because I know KIC is going to be building a couple of like 3 units up there on Woodland and Park Avenue for the veterans, and that's kind of addressing the homeless, but that's only 3 units. I'm not sure if it's going to be 6 people or 3 people, but you know, it's we lost probably 150 to 200 small rooms in the community over the last 20 years, from the Ingersoll, the Bayside, the Pioneer, the Knickerbocker, the Union Rooms, the Bodden Street Plaza. Those were all rooms that you'd get for one night or for a weekend, and we don't have those type of small rooms anymore, so that's a
Can I
big
ask
loss.
what happened to them? Were they just torn down?
A lot of it got converted to tourism for either storage or for the shops. A lot of them buildings were just too old to be used for rooms anymore, and some of them have gotten torn down, some of them converted into tourism. So we're just think it's going to be taking many agencies to come up with a plan, and we're going to have to all cooperate and work together.
Mm-hmm. And Hailey, did you think WISH would want to be involved with the comprehensive, just moving forward maybe not in a leadership role, but somehow.
Yeah, I definitely think that Wish would probably like to be involved, just because right now we are dealing with a large population of women that are homeless, or men that have been receiving services, day services from us, which a lot of people do not know that we do help men and we do provide them with shelter. It's just unfortunately we don't have the funding right now to provide men with 30-day shelters, but just referring people to these shelters.
Okay. And another question or comment from a member of the audience. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Deborah Milam from the Ketchikan Office of Alaska Legal Services. I'm the paralegal, and I'm also on the homeless committee. And once we get a housing in place, it is our intention to be there on a schedule, whatever we set up. And the VA is also interested.
That's another big issue that I think a lot of communities are dealing with, and I know the White House is current Veterans Administration has a goal of reducing veterans homelessness by the year 2015 or 2020. So
they need to get to work then.
yeah. And I think there are a lot of people who are have served this nation and are now homeless, and that's a really unfortunate thing. And I imagine it's something that you see here in Ketchikan.
Yeah, I don't know that we have a disproportionate amount of veterans that are homeless in our community, and we've only identified like maybe 3 to 5 over the last few years, but it's definitely in the state of Alaska, it's a major issue in the state of Alaska.
Is there a shortage of land that would be suitable for a project like we're talking about, a comprehensive
well, I don't think land's the issue, it's the expense of building that's the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of land available.
Well, I don't know if there's plenty of land, but I think there is land, yes, that borough and city both own land. I think it would be just the cost of erecting a shelter that would be very expensive.
And then the cost of renting it, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah, the other issues too, one of the biggest issues with running a shelter, as we all know, is that operating expenses are hard to come by. Most grantees don't give to operating expenses. We're blessed in that the city and the borough both recognize those as valuable things that need to be addressed, because you can't run a program without staff and rent and other things. But a lot of grantees from the federal and state down don't want to pay operating expenses. They want to pay program expenses or bricks and mortar, but not operating expenses. So that's one of the biggest challenges of getting something running.
Mm-hmm. And then one of our audience members commented that you might be looking at multiple facilities because of the varying backgrounds, and no two homeless individuals or families are alike.
That's true.
So how do you build a comprehensive homeless shelter that fits the needs of a good mix without being too one-size-fits-all?
Well, I think it just depends on how the shelter is set up. So, I mean, if the shelter can be locked down by each by each floor, where separate entrances are used for different clients, then it could work. But it would take a little more staff to run something like that. Okay. So, and a big enough building to make it work. So, yeah.
Hailey, do you have thoughts about how to run a comprehensive shelter that, is not kind of a one-size-fits-all, but really offers a comprehensive solution?
I think what Lisa had said, where it's separate floors, different entrances for people. I know that a lot of time we have separate entrances at Wish that we use for specific tasks, and depending on the program participant that we're working with and their trauma levels, where they'd enter, and just different areas to facilitate that. But I definitely think that it could all possibly be in one building as opposed to different locations.
Mm-hmm. And Merle, do you have thoughts?
There's another lady there.
Oh, we have a question from the audience. Why don't you step up?
My name is Joy Davis, and I have basically a twofold question. Talking about networking and providing services and working together as a community, number one, has there been any community surveys done that I know there are a lot of instruments available that can kind of identify areas of need. And then talking with a neighbor out here in the audience, Patchworks was available that worked on networking resources here for youth. One of those resources was asset building at that time. What has been done, and what do you think that we could do in this area?
Okay, well, the Wellness Coalition in 2012, the fall of 2012 to fall of 2013, did a community a survey, yes, and it's all published on the website. It's, I think we tried to break it down to like a 7 or 8 page document. And it was presented to the community last fall, and it's on the website. You can download it right off the website. And that took us a little over a year to put together. So we put it online, we sent it out, we took it to the library, we stood at the stores. We got about 650 community members that participated. So it was a pretty good spectrum. It wasn't as wide as we had hoped. So that we have done it was a pretty comprehensive community assessment. And I didn't bring copies of that with me, I'm sorry. Afton, who's out in the lobby, could answer those questions better. She's the one that compiled the data. So that has been done. It needs to be done again because the community changes. It's a constantly evolving situation. So, and that was the second one. The Wellness Coalition was launched from the Community Compass survey that was done by United Way in 2006. So we in our strategic plan, as we started the Wellness Coalition, wanted to do it every 3 years. So we were running about a year late, but we started late 2011 to 2012 and into 2013. It took us about a year and a half to get that survey done. So that's the most current data. And it was pretty comprehensive. It covered pretty much everything in the community. Patchworks closed down over a year ago. They just couldn't sustain it, so they closed the organization down. But it did deal directly. Yeah, the assets are definitely something that could be incorporated into everything we do, because it kind of leads back to what Kaila and Katie Jo have been talking about, the building of the network and encouraging kids. And it's not just kids, it's young mothers and young people, and we all need encouragement, right? We all need someone to trust, someone to talk to. But yeah, building the assets just in the families and in the community. And the Wellness Coalition has been talking about how to incorporate that into all the 9 task forces that are currently operating, but it should be a community-wide thing. How does it work? I don't have an answer for that. I don't have any way to know that, but yeah. I mean, even if we just focused on, say, the top 10 assets to the community and tried to do some education and awareness around that, that would be a first step, definitely. I know. Katie, you're probably real familiar with the 40 assets, aren't you? Yeah, so, yeah. Do you use them in any way within your programming?
No, we really do more of the using best practice models.
Which is kind of in the wave.
Yeah, to work with the youth that we have, but I'm trying to remember what some of those are. But what our focus is, I think, in hearing all of everything that everyone's saying, and hearing all kind of the possibilities and what we need to focus on, and in consideration of having some data but not having all the data that we would like to see what's going on in our community. One of the pieces of data that I've been really compelled by recently in taking a look at what we're doing as a community and even as a state is the ACEs data, which that confuses people because that has nothing to do with oil. It's ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences, and there was a longitudinal study done that was pretty mind-blowing for the healthcare community with regard to the number of adverse childhood experiences that someone lives through directly correlates with a lifetime of other chronic issues that impair functioning and impair engaging in a productive and healthy lifestyle to the point of being fatal.
Can you give us a specific example?
Could I add to that?
Yes, please.
It's passed on genetically. It changes the genetics, and it's passed on.
Yes, and that's something that's also coming up in the research, is that that certain kinds of trauma, abuse and neglect, fundamentally change a person's physiology. It's equated to brain damage. Some kinds of neglect and some kinds of trauma experience affect brain damage, and so it's a very holistic way of looking at this that, we need to take a holistic approach to this. And to start looking at what has happened to you and when do we choose to address this? Are we going to choose to address this as a community or as a state when it becomes a chronic homeless problem? Is that when we're going to address it? Or are we going to address children, families with children who are homeless? Because we know that the life experiences of a child will put them on a trajectory that not just affects their mental health, it affects their physical health. And their ability to function in our society and be productive members and support, support our communities. And so this is something that we have got to start considering this. We have to start taking a look at when are we going to start addressing this problem. And I think as a community, one of the smartest things we could do is provide more support to homeless families with children. Because we know that it's documented in research study after research study how this instability and multiple placements puts kids at risk. And those experiences, if we're not providing some kind of resiliency building, some kind of protective factor around that, they're going to live those experiences as adults and parents of children. So for the stability of our community, it's vital that we get at the heart of that.
How do you think you do that, though? What's the best way within this kind of framework that we've been talking about all evening, a comprehensive homeless shelter for Ketchikan? Is there?
Well, one of the things at the top of the list is get people in a place where they're not going to have their traumas compounded. So Hailey's been talking the entire time about what happens to women that she has to turn away. You haven't been in a situation where you've been violated in the last week, or whatever time frame that is, so you can't be here, and they have to figure that out, where they're going to go in the community, and they're ending up going to places where they're being traumatized again, where they're being violated again. And it's potential. That's a fact for kids too. We know that they're at higher risk of being abused and neglected, and witnessing things like substance abuse and domestic violence when they're not in a stable home environment. We know this. This is a fact. And so providing for a way to stabilize families and give them what they need to start creating a new life, that's the first thing. Providing services to directly address the trauma is another. To directly address the issues of substance abuse in the family, the issues of domestic violence in the family. So it's got to be a whole approach. And I think that where we start is get them a place to live so that they're not continually being put in harm's way.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything to add on to that?
Well, that's probably the biggest issue, but it's also a generational issue too. We have the last 30, 40 years, we have a generation that's gone from poverty to poverty to poverty because that's become their normal. So that's a little bit of an issue too, and that needs to be addressed at the bottom as well as everything else. So.
Mm-hmm. It's like a repeating cycle. You saw your mom or dad or whoever you're living with get domestically abused, and they're going to grow up as an adult doing the same thing because that's what they grew up with.
Merle, do you have...
South Central Foundation, they have a wonderful program, the Family Wellness Warriors Initiative. It's in Anchorage, and I just got back from that, and it's a wonderful program where they bring people in from the villages, mostly Alaska Natives, but they have a lot of allies and a lot of non-natives that participate. But they bring you in, they basically teach you how to tell your life story and in a safe place. And so it's a wonderful program that works. It's just, for me, it's a little frustrating having to go all the way to Anchorage to get this kind of help, because I am a survivor of early childhood trauma, and it can follow you through your whole life, and it can really be a struggle to be successful, and definitely would want those type of services in as part of the homeless shelter, because it's definitely needed. The Alaska Native people, we suffered a lot from the genocide and the loss of our land and our language, and everybody knows the same story, but it is a lot more challenging for Alaska Natives to be successful because of early childhood trauma, and would do anything to support those services being provided.
Having been through that process yourself, what worked for you?
Just having a place, safe place with peers, people that have been through the same thing and understand the struggles of overcoming that early childhood trauma. Takes a lot of work, a lot of courage, a lot of sacrifice, and it takes a community.
I went through the same training as Merle did
Mm-hmm.
in 2005 up in Anchorage. I was like the only white woman in the entire group, so it was a very interesting experience. But the reality is that we tend to think nobody else has gone through the same things we have, and the reality is that many people that you know have gone through the same type of issues.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So.
it strikes me that a lot of the solutions aren't exactly reinventing the wheel. That
No.
we have good ideas and we know what works. It's just finding the resources.
Yeah, and implement.
Yeah,
And
we had challenge days come into the high school here and into the junior high. That was a wonderful program. I volunteered several times, and that's where they bring the students in and they put them in a group. I was a small group leader, and they get the same opportunity to talk about what their challenges are at that time. And many times their peers, they have no idea that they're really struggling, and so it gives them permission to be authentic, to be who you really are. And yeah, I struggle, and then their friends can offer a helping hand if it's just a good word every morning or conversation.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
what is challenge days?
Challenge Day is when they brought some trainers in from
It's a national program.
yeah, it's a really good national program, and they bring the students in small groups, and they give them a chance to talk about their daily struggles. And it's many times they've never had that conversation at school. You go to school and everyone asks, how is everything? Oh, it's fine, and when it really isn't. So being able to be authentic and be real in a safe place and know that you're not alone.
So if we know, like I said, we're not reinventing the wheel, we know what works. Why is it so challenging to address youth and family homelessness? Hailey? You have any ideas?
I mean, we're just not seeing the numbers, nor we have the facilities in the community, resources, whatnot. We all have a specific guidelines, of specific people that we help to, and it's just the people falling through the cracks. And I think just as a community, how are we supposed to provide wraparound, trauma-informed, self-sufficient care for these people? So.
Does anybody else have any thoughts on why it's so challenging?
I think for me, I think it's because there has to be so many funding sources and many agencies and organizations involved to come up with the funding, the operating budget, the facility, and everything that's needed to have a facility, a comprehensive shelter here in Ketchikan.
I would say that we're humans, and so we don't tend to deal with issues until they become full-blown crises. There's limited resources, and there's unlimited needs to a certain extent. And so I think, like I've said, one of the key things that we're going to have to do is make this issue very, very visible, so that we all know that this is happening and we all care about this topic, and that we don't want to let it continue in our community.
Okay, we have another question or comment from our audience here?
Thank you. There was an article in the paper, and it referred to a very excellent report about homelessness with youth. We are in Alaska. We have Anchorage, Fairbanks, Wasilla, and Ketchikan's now dropping down to the 4th largest, I think. So it's hard for this community of 13,000 to get guidance from Anchorage or Fairbanks, et cetera. But there must be other communities in the United States who are facing the same thing and are a little bit farther ahead than we are that we could go to get some ideas about how to overcome some of these problems. I just don't think we have to do all the reinventing ourselves. And I wonder if that's part of what you're working with as you're going around the state. Alaska's different, I totally understand that, but homelessness is rampant within the United States, and I know there are people doing that. And what we've been talking about here is having the top level of our community care, and you're speaking to that, and other people are speaking to that, so that we can actually act. One of the things that goes on in our community is we study things to death. And so now it's time to make this happen, and I'm hoping that you can find wisdom from other places to help us speed it on.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And there are some really innovative, dynamic things happening in the state around this issue. There's a program in the Mat-Su Valley called My House that serves homeless youth, and I've been learning more and more about the things that they're doing, and it's amazing. It's amazing. They run businesses, and they give the youth jobs in their businesses, and they're providing a service to the community, and they have tremendous support from the community because there's this very symbiotic relationship going, and the community is rejoicing in these youth's successes, and it's very, very inspiring, and I think you're right on. And I wonder if it's not a lack of models out there, but kind of trying to figure out how we want to approach this collectively. How does Ketchikan, I know how I want to approach it, and Lisa knows how she wants to approach it, but how do we want to approach it? I think that's the question that we all need to answer, and then we can make a plan for, and get some marching orders.
Okay, so who wants to take the lead in figuring that out? Lisa?
I vote for Lisa.
You mean Lisa? Yeah, okay.
You've been nominated. So do we have to treat youth and family homelessness differently than, for instance, veterans homelessness or just men's homelessness or chronic homelessness?
I don't think it has to be treated differently. I think it just needs to be addressed. Yeah. I mean, the reality is, the underlying part is all these subcultures all have pretty much the same issues in a lot of ways. We just don't have anything in place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's getting that thing in place.
Yeah, getting something in place, yeah.
All right.
However that looks.
All right. And so that's the next step, right? That's kind of been
Well, we hope
identified.
that's the next step. It just kind of depends. I mean, the task force is only like 6 people big right now, so there's only so much 6 of us can do when we all do other things. So, yeah.
Let's ask some of the other panelists. Like, Hailey, what do you think the next step should be? Where should we go from here?
I think this right now, what we're doing is the next step, just talking about it, getting it into the community. I honestly didn't know there was a task force for homelessness up until yesterday, and when I met with Lisa, and we talked a bit about the plan, and I got to read over it, but just getting word out in the community, because I definitely think the funding's out there, and just collaborating with community partners is so important, and talking.
Merle, do you have any thoughts on what the next step should be?
We just got 250 million given to the 2 mines that they want to develop in the area. We got 210 million for 2 new ferries. So I think our community needs to take ownership of the homeless issue, and we're from a very generous community, Ketchikan. We've overcome many obstacles together as a community, and I think our community members need to take ownership of this issue and come up with solutions. I mean, we've kind of got an outline, but you know, we need a facility, we need the operating budget, we need someone to operate it. Those are things that we can all overcome, but we need help.
Okay. Katie, do you have any thoughts on what the next step should be? Where does this group or some other group, or you know, everybody as individuals, where do you all go from here?
I think, you know, like I said, I think that we need to decide as a community what we're going to do and what we want to do. I think for us, there's not a question of if there's a problem. There's a problem. That's our reality. And then, you know, once we come to terms with that, what do we want to do about it? Are we willing to put in, you know, kind of the blood, sweat, and tears to make integrated, you know, supportive housing possible? Are we going to, you know, and I think that a lot of people are on that page, but it is going to be a community effort. It's going to have to be a community effort. And so getting the word out there about what, you know, that's one of the things that I'm hearing that we need to do is we really need to get the word out there. You know, everyone should know that we have this plan. Everyone should know what the goals are. Our leaders, the leaders in our municipality need to know. They need to know that we're having these conversations, that we're looking at other programs throughout the state, and that there are some really amazing things happening in the state around this issue. And so, you know, getting people inspired, getting them the information, and then getting them inspired to build some momentum to do something.
Okay, and Kaila, what do you think the next step should be?
Something that one haven't said yet. I think you guys are right. Just finding the funding for this, having the community be informed about what's going on would be a great help to have this to start.
And you're the youngest member here, so
I'm 18.
What about bringing some youthful energy to the project?
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, sorry to put you on the spot. We have about 5 minutes left, so each of you can have kind of a minute to sum up any thoughts or ideas that you have remaining. Lisa?
I would just encourage people to get involved. You know, this is a community issue, and we would love to talk to you if you're interested.
Okay, and Hailey, any final thoughts or?
Yeah, just talking about it. Like, I think it's great that the people that turned out today to talk about this issue, because it definitely is a huge issue in Southeast Alaska, all of Alaska, and I just think that it needs to be addressed with shelter and empowering people through having a safe place to move on to the next step in their life, and having people realize that this doesn't have to be a whole life, it's just a portion.
Merle, did you have any final thoughts that you want to share?
Yeah, I think that Ketchikan could overcome this homeless issues and help the people that are in need, and the programs work together and cooperate, and I've seen it happen before. Like I said, KIC and Tlingit Haida work together, and we got those 40 units up on the hillside, low-income tax credit program, and so I'd just like to see the community take ownership of this homeless plan and help us come up with solutions.
Katie? Any final thoughts?
I do have some final thoughts. I think we need to start making proactive decisions based on what the research is telling us, and the research is telling us that adverse childhood experiences create some barriers that someone, if they don't have what they need to have a safe environment and to recover, that they're going to live those out for the rest of their life. We have to start making decisions about that. So if there was one area of our community where we could be funneling resources, it would be to children, to families with children. And that's any resources that are going to families with children are going to be prevention. That's going to be prevention for other social issues that we're going to deal with, for other financial issues that we're going to deal with. And so I can't emphasize that enough.
All right, and Kaila, any final thoughts from you?
I totally agree. I grew up in Ketchikan. I'm kind of tired of seeing students, my friends' families. They have so many potential to be a part of education, work, and having a good life. But I think it'd be really nice to see this to come together sooner.
Okay. And before we go, just from each of you again, is there a way to contact you, or do you have a website to go for more information? Lisa?
Well, the homeless plan is on the Love in Action website as well as the KWC website. I brought my business cards if anybody just wants contact direct information.
Okay. And what's the website address?
Mine is LIAKTN at, what is my website? LIAKTN.org.
Gotcha. And Hailey, how do people get a hold of WISH?
We have a 24-hour hotline that you can call if you need information, and a business line. I have brochures here, or just wishat.org is our website. But we are staffed 24 hours a day. So if you ever have any questions, even if it's in the middle of the night, you can always call and ask the advocate on duty.
Okay. Merle, how do people get in touch with Tlingit Haida?
They have their offices in Juneau. Through them, they have a separate housing entity. And then we have our different chapters of delegates throughout in each community.
Okay. And is there a good website for people to reach?
Yeah, Central Council, Tlingit Haida Indian Tribes of Alaska.
All right. And then residential youth care, is there a website for that, Katie?
Yeah, we do have a website. It's rycalaska.com. And I can also be reached through the contact form on our website.
Okay, great. And I don't think you
I
do.
don't
You
have
have a website? No.
Kaila should have a website.
All right. Well, I want to thank you all for joining me. That's all the time we have for this town hall. We've been discussing youth and family homelessness in Ketchikan. Thanks to our panel and our live audience for sharing some of your ideas. You can watch this town hall and find out more about a roof on our website, which is projects.360north.org/roof. Thanks for joining us.
This has been a Roof Town Hall discussion recorded November 19th, 2014 in Ketchikan. It was produced by KTOO Public Media and 360 North. A Roof is funded by the Public Affairs Fund for Homelessness and Appropriate Affordable Housing. Contributors include the Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority, the Alaska Coalition on Housing and Homelessness, and the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence Juneau in partnership with the Juneau Clean Air Coalition.